Growing Your Business, a series of podcasts brought to you by the LearningWorks team at Highlands Islands Enterprise. In this podcast, we'll be focusing on the topic of international trade. Business leaders and experts from across the Highlands and Islands will be sharing their thoughts, insights, and best practice tips on how to get the most out of trading overseas. The payoff for exporting overseas is a potential growth in your business's revenue and profit. But before you can think of launching into a new marketplace, you need to make sure you've done your research, as explained by Rob Clark from the International Trade Team at Highlands and Islands Enterprise.
There are a number of areas of research that companies should consider when they're looking at overseas markets. In many ways, they're the same kinds of things that companies would look at in the UK market, so it's useful to get an overview of the size and shape of the market, who are the key operators in the market. Very useful to look at consumer habits and consumer behaviour because you can easily make assumptions which turn out to be costly mistakes if you don't do the research. Useful to look at your competitors so you know who your competitors are. Also trying to identify who are the people in the market that you might work with. If you're looking to enter the market, very often it's easier to do that alongside somebody who's already operating in that country. So doing a little bit of research to find out who are the companies there that you feel you might be able to partner with, that you might have something to offer and they might have something to offer you, can be very, very useful.
James Finlay from Cocoa Mountain, a Highlands-based gourmet chocolate producer, tested products from overseas and even researched prices before deciding to export abroad.
Market research involved travelling to sort of Austria, Belgium, looking at small chocolate manufacturers on the continent, looking at the whole package, basically the taste of products, what flavours, what different varieties, whether these flavours would work in the UK, with an aim of providing a global product, what would be internationally accepted flavours or whatever. So it's like just get a general feel for what was out there. When we're looking at our pricing policy, we looked online basically. We just looked at what other small chocolate producers in the UK were doing and in the States. So we're pitching a product at the higher end of the market and we're using fresh cream in our produce. We put ourselves on par with similar types of products. The real gourmet market we're looking at.
So initial thorough research is vital for any business looking to export. But even after doing the research, some companies can still get it wrong, which means it's vital that a business is prepared to make changes to its exporting plan if called upon. Mike Grandinetti explains more.
Secondly, market discovery. We heard this from Cocoa Mountain. Okay, you want to be pretty systematic, right? So when you go into that first geography that you want to go after, you want to be very intellectually honest with yourself. If you look at what's happening there, right? And I see this a lot with entrepreneurs trying to come into the U.S. market. The competitive intensity in a small market like Denmark or Sweden or Scotland doesn't lend itself to really having a lot of different companies coming in. So there's a lack of awareness as to what's really happening on the global stage. So as you start to go into these overseas markets, you've got to be very willing to look in the mirror and say, you know what, these companies may be much better than us. Now, our friends from Cocoa Mountain carved out a unique position, right? And great imagery to support it with the beautiful natural beauty of northern Scotland. But you've got to be very willing to say, maybe we don't have it quite right. So I'll give you a local example, Tesco's, right? Tesco's is a great, highly respected UK-based grocery retailer. Now, Tesco's has been for the last year trying to attack the US market from the vantage point of the West Coast with a unique offering, which is a small format store. And Tesco's, unfortunately, uncharacteristic because they're very well respected for the way they do market research, but for their first ever foray into the US market, they didn't quite do their homework. And this is what happens when you don't quite do your homework. These are some of the things that are being written about Tesco today, that it appears the good news is they're taking it to heart, they're being honest, and they're saying, you know what, maybe we didn't get it right. Maybe we need to slow down and rethink what we're doing. But these are the kinds of things that you want to, these are market signals that you want to respond to. So here's a blog from someone who was in their store. It says, the only time I would see myself shopping there is if most of the population was infected by some kind of rage-inducing virus And I was one of the few to survive and actually needed food, okay? That's a pretty visceral comment, okay? Now, here's another one. I have tried to like it. They just opened a new store in Palm Desert, California. With their robotic checkout stations, their stupid product selection, their employee vacant aisles, I always felt like I've entered some food twilight zone. Please don't make me go back. Now, you think the customers are having a good time shopping at Tesco's in California? No, okay? Now, how could Tesco's, who was so well known for doing research, have made such a mistake? I can't give you any simple answers, but I do know that I often see that what happens is when people enter the US market, there's a level of intimidation. The good news is what Tesco's is doing is they're being honest. They're saying, you know what, we really are struggling. They're pulling back. They're catching their breath. They're kind of taking a 90-day moratorium. They had this incredibly ambitious goal to open a store every 2 or 3 days there. And now they're saying we're going to take 90 days. We're going to reevaluate. We're going to reassess. We're going to understand what it is that we're not doing right, do some market research, and go back and replan our approach to the US market.
Once you've completed your research, the next stage is to put an export strategy into place. This is a detailed look at the market, the product you're hoping to export, and your business itself. It's all good and well spotting a potential opportunity overseas, but as Sir Richard Needham explains, you need to ensure that your business is set up for exporting. If not, you could be putting it at risk.
If you're going to go into exports, so you're in exports, then again, look at where you go, look at where you start. Have you got a product that you can sell, that you can export? Question, only if it's working here, if it's working in Britain, it's going well, it's doing properly, then consider whether you can start overseas. But don't until you're absolutely clear that you've exhausted your home market and you've got the resources and time to put into it. Because if you take resources and time in a recession and ignore your own business, your own existing market, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you start to try and export. So again, get help. You can get it on the internet, you can get electronic help, you can get it through business links, you can get it through Hi. There are all sorts of ways you can do it. I'm all in favour of exporting, but make sure if you're going to do it that you've got the resources, and remember that it's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you more because you're going to have distributors. They're going to need margin. It's going to cost you more in terms of marketing and advertising, in terms of promotion. But all these things can work provided that you've got your plans right, your strategy right, and you've got the team right, and you've got the ability, and you've got the people to do it.
Richard Day of Highland Biosciences, an Inverness-based company that exports many of their products to the US market, believes a business needs to be aware of the hidden costs of trading overseas whilst putting together an export strategy.
So what's really important when you're considering exporting and the planning activities that you need to make, what's really important there is to make sure that you do have a good budget for travel. You do consider the additional costs of exporting samples and materials to the client. It's extremely important that you put in enough money for the legal fees for doing that, and also for ensuring that you have the right documentation in place before you start to ship things out. There's definitely an increased amount of money required for any marketing activities that you're going to need. For example, visiting trade shows and presenting at foreign conferences, you need to put some extra additional cash into for doing that. Compared to the UK market, that's a considerable sum generally.